Welcome back to Room for a Podcast. My name is Brittany, and we have a fantastic guest today. Her name is Grace. Welcome, Grace. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's a nice sunny day in upstate New York. That's a change.
Right.
So it's
Yeah. I was
pretty
like,
good.
wait, where?
Upstate New York.
Yeah.
So it might be. Yeah, I think Sunday, Saturday was like 70 degrees warm. It was like the first sunny warm day we've had, and then yesterday it was like 30 degrees. So
Oh.
it changes pretty quick.
I feel that because it's 70 degrees actually today, or supposed to be 70 degrees, but yesterday it was 44. So,
And where are you located?
I'm in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're getting our warm sunny days, but like we're still getting our cold too.
Yeah, that's good. Just adjust the camera a bit. All right. So we're gonna dive into this episode. I first saw Grace's stuff on TikTok, and I was like amazed. I'm like watching all her videos, sending them to my mom and my wife, my sister. I'm like, look, check it out. Like, listen to this, And one thing that really stuck out to me was like, you said hyper versus hypo. So like maybe sad, depression versus like a burst of energy, but not be able to focus.
Yeah.
So you want to like dig a little bit deeper into that on how you like. When did you learn about that, and what made you like dig into it to share your experience with people?
Absolutely. So, just like a little bit about my background, I have my bachelor's of social work and my master's of social work. And so during my undergraduate studies and during my master's studies, we had to do what were called placements. And that was where we would go to these different, depending on what you wanted to do, these different areas of study within social work. So I had friends who were at hospitals where people had been involuntarily committed for mental health reasons. And I had friends who were working at Department of Social Services who were in school. So basically you could decide where you wanted, so you could get a feel of what it was like to be a social worker in different aspects. And so I got so many different experiences because of my schoolwork. Like I had to work with, I taught a parenting class. I ain't got no kids, but I taught a parenting class. Like it was all these different experiences you got to have. And so during my course of study, what a lot of people don't know about the social work field is it's like a combination of psychology theory with real world praxis. So it's like I'm working with clients and I'm using these psychological concepts to help treat what my clients are experiencing. And so a lot of this stuff I learned in my undergrad and grad school work. And through a lot of the placements that I had, I was an in-home counselor for youth and adults. I worked at the Department of Social Services. A lot of this stuff I got to witness firsthand. And so what happened was when I got to the second year of my social work master's, I was like, I don't know that I want to be a clinician. Like all this whole time they had been like, you're, LCSW, pushing us all towards that track, which is a licensed clinical social worker, which is essentially a therapist. They're underneath that heading of therapist. And so I was like, I don't think I want to do this. And so I actually started to shift my focus from individual level things to more systemic level, because I noticed a lot of my clients were being affected, yes, on the individual level, but there was a lot of systemic issues that needed to be alleviated in order for us to actually look at what was going on at the individual level. And so I was like, okay, but I have all of this brain knowledge of like so much stuff I've learned in the last 6 years of being in school. And so it's like, what do I do with this? Like I I'm not like an in-home counselor anymore, and I'm not treating patients anymore, but I have this degree and this knowledge, and I have this certification, even though I don't necessarily use it. What do I do? So I was like, I'm just gonna make a video about this thing that I learned. Oops, I'm gonna make a video about this thing that I learned. Because I had been taught a lot of the medical model stuff because I had gone to school to study how to treat patients, as a therapist. And so when I got on TikTok and I saw that a lot of this medical model stuff was being used to like pathologize your whole life. So you're too scared to even make a move because you think it's, oh, if I watch my favorite TV show 5 times in a row, something's wrong. It's like, it's your favorite TV show. Of course you're going to watch it. Like, a lot of these things that like the medical model was saying was being taken by these people who didn't actually understand what was going on. So I was like, okay, you guys know that like these responses, whether it's like the anxiety that you feel or the depression that you feel, are just biological responses to triggers, right? And because you're a human, part of your biology is your brain. And so your brain is like, oh, something is happening and something is wrong. I'm going to be triggered into doing something that helps us escape what is wrong or what is threatening me. And so when I was in this video, I was like, this video is not going to go anywhere. It's totally fine. Like, this is a 7-minute video on an app where people are just clicking through. And I was like, you know what? Whoever sees it, sees it. But I was like, hey, me and my therapist, because I'm in therapy as well, have been talking about this concept. And I have learned about this concept in my undergrad and graduate level work. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to help you understand a little bit more of your own humanness instead of trying to make you perfect in my eyes or heal you to a point where you don't even recognize your own self anymore. I want you to see yourself in your healing. I always tell people you have to leave space in your healing for your humanity. And so like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say to people, hey, you know that when you are triggered, it's basically like a perceived threat, like, any animal. If you perceive a threat, you're going to act. That's what your nervous system is designed to do. So I was just like, you know what? I've learned all this stuff. I need to correct some stuff. If something happens with this video, something happens with it. But
something did happen, right? Something huge.
Something happened with it. And so basically, to explain the hyper versus hypoarousal, like I was saying, when you are triggered by something, or big or small, when you are triggered by something, your body goes into this natural biological state of, holy crap, I've got to protect you. And so even though it may look like it's taking away from your life, it's not. It's actually you saying to you, hey, something's not right. And either I have got to numb myself out completely to figure it out, or I've got to bounce around until I figure it out. And so it's like,
I just want to pop in real quick and say, this is not medical advice. That we are not medical professionals. So take this with a grain of salt. If you like it, use it. If you don't, that's that. But this is not medical advice, y'all. I'm sorry. No, absolutely. Grace. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the episode. So yeah.
Absolutely, totally. This is not medical advice. I say that all the time. Mm-hmm. I can't give you medical advice, and I can't be your therapist, especially not through a screen. And so your body is doing this natural thing that it does. It's on the same level as producing adrenaline when you are triggered into that state, that fight or flight state. It's on the same level as that. And so a lot of people think that like it takes away from their humanity and to be hypo or hyper aroused. But in actuality, it is the very basis of your humanity. It's your nervous system. So what happens is you're triggered by something big or small, and you move out of what you can tolerate as a human being. Whatever that is, that's your business. In the words of Miss Tabitha Brown, that's your business. So like whenever you move out of whatever you can tolerate, because you are triggered, you move into this state of hypo arousal, which is, I like to say, po is the drop. So you numb, your body feels very, see, here's where here's where the medical model can help us out a little bit, is where when I say you're hypo aroused, you lose interest in the things that you like to do. You don't have an appetite. You don't have, all of the stuff that is associated with the word depression.
Yeah.
And so that is helpful, but understanding what is happening in your body is holistic.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, I may have this medical term called depression. If I choose, that's your business. I'm not gonna get into that. That's your business. But what I need to understand is that regardless of what I call it, there is something happening in my body that is causing me to not be able to function within my window of tolerance. And so when you are feeling hypo, low to the flow, I teach a lot of teenagers, so
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta relate. You gotta relate.
You gotta relate.
You gotta relate to them.
And so when you're in that hypoarousal state, a lot of people think they have to figure out why they're there while they're in it. And like, one of the things I always teach people is that you can't do that. Your nervous system is not made to do that. Like, your nervous system is made to take care of a threat, and that is it. You as a whole person, once you are out of it, can then discover what put you in there, what triggered you or whatever. But while you're in it, you can't do nothing. You can't do nothing. So it's on you at that point to breathe through any guilt and shame that we might have been given by white supremacist and capitalist messaging around slowing down, around resting, around all of those things. You have to breathe through those because we've been given them. So it's not like we can't exist in a world where that's never happened. We have to breathe through them. And then we have to lean into resting, which is what our body is naturally asking us to do. We have to lean into not in a way that invalidates people's feelings and emotions, but you have to lean into joy and gratitude. Those are things that we know chemically can help the brain along this holistic process. So it's like, yes, you are experiencing this and nothing is being taken away from that. But what I need you to understand is also, if we are trying to get you back into your window of tolerance so we can figure out what is wrong, we're going to have to take a step. We're going to have to be accountable to ourselves and say, hey, okay, I'm in this hypoarousal, I'm resting, I'm trying to eat, I'm trying to, move my body in a healthy way. I'm trying to do all of those things. And I'm also trying to practice gratitude and joy because I know that will help bring me up out of my hypoarousal so I can help myself figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I like that because, like you said, it's just a chemical reaction or a biochemical experience or reaction, and most of the time it starts in our brain. So if we're like, from experience, for me, if I'm like thinking about something that like triggers me or gets me upset, and I'm constantly thinking about it over and over and over again, I'm like, if it's something in the past, I'm reliving that moment, which is putting my body back in that moment as if it happened. Or if I'm stressing about the future, I'm worried about something that hasn't happened yet, and I'm putting myself in a situation that hasn't even happened, but my brain, my body think is there. That threat is there, so now I'm like stressed out. But for me, from my experience, what helps me is like staying present, and as cliche as it sounds, making a gratitude list. Like if I'm in a funk mood, I'm like, all right, I'm so grateful for like today's sunny out. I'm so grateful to have a sunny day in Syracuse. I'm so grateful, to have a family or to be alive. Like any little thing, it could be something that I have clean water to drink, like something small, or which is huge. It's huge, but to us in this country, it's all I have clean water. I have like just basic needs or to huge
Yeah.
anything that's going to help you get out of that state to
Yeah.
get you going and start to do something. Or I like to what they say, um move a muscle, change your thought.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like I hate washing dishes, right, or doing anything like that, but I know for sure that if I'm in like a hypo arousal state, if I started moving, like, I guess I'll wash these dang on dishes, you
Dishes.
know.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about whatever it is that got me there. And now I'm just focusing on like getting these dishes clean. Now I'm wiping the counter, I'm sweeping the floor, you know, things like that. Just, you know, moving muscle, change of thought. But I just want to pop in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Feel free to pop in because, yes, like my grandma used to say to me all the time, I would tell her that I was sad. She'd be like, "How you sad? Go feed them chickens." And I'd be like, "Dang, grandma, can I be sad?" And now that she's passed on, like I now realize that she was like, if you sad, you living back there. If you're anxious, you living
Hmm.
up there, but you're not living right
Hmm.
here where the chickens need to be fed. Right here is where the
Yeah,
chickens need to be fed.
and you went to go feed the chickens. You being of service, like you have to get out of your own
You do.
head, get out of your own shit.
You
Like
do.
go feed these chickens.
Go feed these
The only
chickens.
way they're gonna eat is if you feed them. So you being of service, let me go feed these chickens. And now you're not even thinking about what happened in the past or anxious about the
Mhm.
future. That's where a
Exactly.
lot of people they I'm not gonna say they don't do it, but some people just don't know. You don't know what you
Yeah.
don't know. I had to go through a whole bunch of crap to start to
Right.
understand, like, okay, when I start to overthink, I feel a
Hmm.
certain way. And I did a certain action to get out of that mood, you know. But
Hmm.
it's like I had to be aware of it, like, oh, this works for me.
Right.
And when it started to happen again, like, oh, I know what this is. I know what to do to get out of it. And it's
Exactly.
not always the answer, but no one's gonna save me but me
Right.
and my creator, you know. So I can't wait for someone to come and pull me out of this. Like, yes,
Exactly.
people, you know, people can help, but it's up to me, it's up to
It's
you
up to
to
you.
like get through that, you know, and get on the other side of
Exactly.
it. And life is like the seasons, you know, emotions are like the seasons. You know, there's a winter, there's a spring, there's a summer, there's a fall.
There's
I used to those winter times, you know, emotional winters. I used to hate them.
hate
Even
them.
like the winters in upstate New York, I hated it. But over
Mm.
time, I learned to appreciate it. Because I'm like, okay,
Yes.
what am I learning from this? You know, what is
Exactly.
this teaching me? You know, this too shall pass. So let me just keep moving
Exactly.
my feet. Because if I'm in fire and I just stop moving my feet while I'm in, you know, a fire pit, I'm gonna keep burning. I gotta keep
Okay.
moving my feet, move my feet, and once I get to the other side, I'm so grateful that I'm on the other side out of this fire. Now I can appreciate the moment of not being in the fire. Now I can look back and be like, what did this teach me? How did I
Right.
even get? Well, what happened? What did I do to get in that situation? And
Exactly.
how can I how can I avoid it again? And some stuff is inevitable.
Right.
But if it happens again, you've been there before, you know you get through it.
You know
This
you
too
can
shall
do it.
pass.
Okay, you know you could do it. Like that's what I try to get people to understand because a lot of times these TikTok therapists and all these other people will be like, oh, you need to stop trying to disassociate yourself or distract or do all this other stuff. And in fact, that is the very thing that helped you survive the trauma the first time around. So when you heal, you begin to understand that your natural biological responses to triggers and traumas are not a bad thing, but in fact, something that can help you move to a point where you can, safely look back and say, okay, what was happening and how can I fix that? And what was the lesson? Because
Yes.
sometimes you just gotta distract yourself. Sometimes stuff is just not, you can't do it right now. You haven't eaten enough, you haven't slept enough, you haven't, moved your body enough, you haven't done
Hmm.
enough of what you need in order to process something more emotional. So you're not there yet. So sometimes you got to distract yourself. What I teach
And
them, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say what I teach to my former clients and when I'm reparenting myself to understand is that those aren't necessarily bad or detrimental things if you use them to help you grow through what you go through. If
Hmm.
you use your natural human instincts to get you without hurting yourself, I always say this, you can't hurt yourself, you can't hurt other people. So without doing those two things and using those mechanisms to help you get to a point where you can safely process, why wouldn't you use that? if it is
Mhm.
available to you, what we want is for it to not affect your day-to-day life. So you can't say, oh, I'm feeling this big, heavy emotion and distract myself for 6 months. Baby, if you do that, it's going to come out one way or the other. Okay. Like if you don't shoot straight, it's going to come out crooked.
Listen, I swear.
Okay. Like I'm telling you that you have this ability to do that, but I'm also telling you that you need to get that your ability to do that and hone it into something that you can use for your present life. Because if you don't, it's gonna mess you up. Trust
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Trust
I
me.
get it.
I did it.
As far as like you said, certain coping mechanisms are in place to keep you safe. So I know from experience for me, you know, growing up, I developed all of these coping mechanisms to keep me safe. And you know, 30-year-old Brittany don't need the what 10-year-old Brittany needed to survive. So, and I couldn't understand it until I, you know, one got to therapy, and started being willing to look at my part, looking deep within, like what am I doing that no longer serves me? You know, what habits and characteristics am I still displaying as a 27-year-old, 28-year-old, 29-year-old Brittany that are no longer serving me? That's going to continue to put a wedge between me and my family, me and my wife, my daughter. Like, what am I doing? But that's like the awareness and the willingness to like look deep within.
Oh,
And our brain is only, you know, it's here to keep us safe. And it can
right.
be false threats, you know. If this like, you know, what thousands of years ago when it was only like the threat was like a saber tooth tiger.
Right.
And you get an adrenaline rush and you go to safety. And then it's it. You know, they safety, they're good to go. But now it's things like let's see, bills,
Mm-hmm.
finances,
Mm-hmm.
loneliness, like other things that gives our body that same chemical reaction, and our
Right.
brain is like, oh, get to safety, get to safety.
Get to safety.
But the difference is, once you know get out of that perceived threat, now you know you're sitting there watching TV or laying across your bed or at work, now you're thinking about whatever that threat was, that
Mm-hmm.
potential threat, and
Mm-hmm.
now that chemical reaction is supposed to be, you know, maybe 2 minutes. Now it's like now it didn't last for a week or 2 weeks or a
Yeah.
month, and your body's constantly going through that same uh that trigger,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't move through it. Like
Oh.
you can't move through it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's a lot, and I
It
like
is.
I like the holistic model as well because from experience, you know, I had like you know dealt with like quote unquote depression or
Mm-hmm.
anxiety and all that, but even if I'm taking medicine for depression, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not doing something holistically to heal my body and my mind and my spirit, I'm just not gonna. I'm still be depressed. I just don't. I'm numbing it, and I'm not against medicine. I'm not against like
Right.
pharmaceutical and anything like that.
Right.
It's helpful, but for me, from my experience, I had to do other things. I had to make sure I'm moving my body. What my nutrition intake is like because our body is complicated, our brain is
Baby.
complicated, and there's no cookie cutter fix. You know, there's no one thing that's going to fix my whole entire life. You know, so I had to go through it and to be uncomfortable and to be like, you know what, I'm tired of this. I need to make some changes and start seeking out like, all right, let me look up, you know, reading about people, watching videos, like what did people do? And honestly, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I
Same.
start praying, you know, I'm in this 12-step program. You know, I've been sober for I just hit 4 years a few days ago. So thank you. So I had to start praying like, creator help me, what is it, what am I missing, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And one thing about our brain is it's like a scanner. So once you start to think about something or you write it down or whatever, it's called the reticular activating system.
Mm-hmm.
So once you start thinking about it, now you're going to see several opportunities throughout your day or weeks to
Right.
help you. So if I'm thinking about like I want a truck, maybe I should get a truck one day. Tomorrow on my express, I'm gonna see so many trucks that I like that I want to like. Oh, that's a nice truck. That's a nice truck. That's a nice truck.
Mm-hmm.
So if we know it works for things we want, like material things, why not
Right.
use that same method for like our body holistically? Like, oh, I
Right.
need to get better. How can I get better?
Right.
Who, you know, what do I need to do? And then you'll be watching TV or on TikTok or on YouTube, and you see a person might talk about their experience and what they did to help them. You
Mm-hmm.
need to dig more into that, and that's just my experience. That's how I live my life. If I need some changes in my life, I pray on it, look, think about it, look up videos,
Oh, amen.
books, and I'm starting seeing opportunities on how to help me get to that next
Absolutely.
level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everything you just said, I was about to say, baby, you got to turn around and preach to the congregation, because you preach to the choir right
Listen,
now. Cause
I don't have the education experience, like, I don't, have social work or, going to school to be a therapist or anything like that. But I have a ton of experience through my life, and I love to help people and show them that,
right,
hey, I went through these things and I'm okay. Things will be okay. These are the steps I
right.
took, and I'm going to be talking to people. This is what this person went through. These are the steps they took, and this is how they got through it, so that people can hear and like have hope. Because most time that people interview, or they only see like these famous people, these influencers, all this. It's a facade. It's
It's
not real.
God.
We
It's
don't.
not real.
My job here is to talk to everyday people, everyday folks about their experience, strength, and hope, and how they got through it, their journey.
Exactly.
And because we
Exactly.
all, it
Exactly.
ain't rocket science.
It's not. I'm trying to tell you, like, everything you said, when I started medication, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this medication. I ain't gonna do nothing else, and that's gonna be it. I'm not gonna have no more depression. I'm not gonna have no more anxiety. I'm gonna have no more nothing. And I took the medicine, and ain't nothing happened. And I was like, what is this? This is a rip off. What? And
And
then
it
I
causes other problems. Now
realized,
you,
like, I realized, I was like, girl, you're not doing nothing different. You just got the brain power to, like, no, you're not doing nothing different. So it's like, okay, I was like, okay, so what else I got to do? So I started looking into my nutrition, looking into my movement, looking into my everything. And I had to look past the capitalism and white supremacy of it all. Because if I still was looking to that to help me, I still won't go be helped. I still won't go be helped, because a lot of diet culture is like lose weight. And it's like,
mm-hmm.
I can tell you from personal experience, if you think the only way for your body to get healthier is to lose weight, you're already starting off on the wrong foot. You already starting off on the wrong foot, because you're trying to lose weight by, let's see, calorie deficits, fasting, all that stuff. And you don't have enough iron in your body. You don't have enough omega-3s. You don't eat enough dark leafy greens. Like, you don't have any of these nutritions in your body. And now you're taking away the stuff that you were getting, even if it wasn't necessarily enough of what you needed, you were still getting something. And now you're taking that away, and you're wondering why you're feeling terrible, because losing weight wasn't the problem. You didn't need to
Yeah.
lose, you needed to add. Like I tell
Mm-hmm.
everybody, you need to add some peanut butter and apples to your Oreos. You need to add some carrot sticks to your number 11. You need to add some water to this Diet Coke, whatever the heck you want to drink. I'm not telling you to take it away. I'm telling you to add. And that was one of the main, like, the main driving forces between, like, really just relying on the medical model and looking at things more holistically, because a lot of times it's asking you to take away stuff from your life. And it's like, but these things were my protection, and these things were keeping me safe, and these things were doing these, things in my life for me. And what I love about my therapist is she was like, we're not trying to get rid of any of our parts. We're not trying to get rid of nothing. We are trying to heal them so that they reach their fullest potential and you become the most whole version of yourself. So these
Mm-hmm.
parts that are like what she calls firefighter parts, that will just do anything and everything to protect you, we're not trying to get rid of them. We're trying to heal them to know that you're not 10 years old anymore. You're not 3 years old anymore. You don't have to fight that hard anymore. You don't have to be that person anymore. It's not about giving up. It's about what I teach. I don't know if you've seen this one, but like, I teach that it's not necessarily the 5 stages of grief. It is the 5 lessons of grief. And so when you're experiencing these traumatic events, oftentimes we think shame is there to, like, be mean to us, but shame is actually really there to teach us. Like, this thing has come up and shame has come with it, but it's like, shame isn't there to beat you up. Shame is there to teach you what your anger, your bargaining, your denial, your depression, and your acceptance can teach you about the person you want to become. Because underneath what happened to you, underneath all of those things that you went through, there are emotions that you didn't get to feel. And so when these memories come back up, you are not necessarily like, I feel like PTSD annoys me because it's like, it's helpful as a medical model, but as an holistic model, when I'm saying you're having a PTSD episode, what I wish was said more about that is that you are reliving something in order to grieve it so you can move past it. And so instead of seeing yourself as going through these stages, because you can go back and forth between stages and all of these things, but if you come to something and you realize it's about learning a lesson, you're a little bit more comfortable with it coming through your life. Because like when you think grief is stages, you're like, okay, let me get in it, let me get out of it. Let me get into this, let me get out of that. But when you say to myself, this is a lesson I need to learn, it's like, okay, this is a lesson I need to learn. What do I need to learn in order for this not to be constantly repeating itself in my life, but in different ways? And so that's why I'm always just like, the medical model is great if you're learning how to treat a patient. But if you're actually treating a patient, you have to understand things holistically. And that's for any and everybody. That's doctors, psychologists, social workers, all of that. Because what you all don't get to see is that when I was going through my degree, they always taught us two things: empowerment theory, which was find the strength, find it. There is a strength in this person. There is a strength in what they're doing. There is a strength in what is happening. Find it. Use it to motivate them, to empower them to make the change they want. Don't change them. Don't, do any of these things. Empower them to see the strength within themselves. And the second thing was that our clients are the experts of their own lives. And I can have all the knowledge in the world, all of the knowledge in the world, but if I have no one to give it to, what's going on? And you can be the most expertise of your own life because you are. But if you don't necessarily know how to channel this passion, this fire burning within you, what's going to happen? So that's why it becomes so important for us to fight for access to this kind of care for everyone, because you are the expert of your own life. You go into therapy to tell your therapist, this is my life. This is the life I want to live. And it is your therapist, your mental health clinician, whoever's responsibility to say, let me help you do that. Not let me change you into somebody so that you can be somebody different, but let me help you live Grace's life. Let me help you live Brittany's life. Let me help you live anybody else, whoever, life to the fullest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we got into hyper arousal in detail. And then I have a few questions I want to ask about like your journey. And as far as like access, I love the fact that therapy is becoming more common amongst, our community.
Yeah.
Because before, I'm trying to think, a few years ago, so I was in the Navy, and on the ship, we don't have a therapist or a mental health provider. We have a chaplain, which is like not a preacher, but a reverend, or
I got you.
You get what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a military.
So you go. Okay, so you go to them and talk about whatever's going on, and they just listen, nod their head. And some of them are pretty good. They can give you like some kind of not advice, but what they think will help you, right? And that's it. And then it wasn't until maybe like 2021 I started going to therapy. But before, my wife, she always bring it up. She's like, maybe you should check out therapy. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, no, I'm good. Like, we don't. The family I come from, and I know other people of color, their families don't really do therapy. Somebody has to start and then get everybody else going. But at the time, I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, how would they help me? what is that gonna do for me?
Mm-hmm.
But I was big on personal development. I was always reading books on developing the self and being better. But
Right.
I had so much crap inside that I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
working on, that I kept hitting
Mm-hmm.
brick walls.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, like in 2021, it was bad. It was rough for me. So I started to see a therapist, and it wasn't really a good fit. So I found another therapist that was a really good fit, and my life changed.
Changed.
And I started to understand about inner child work and
Mm-hmm.
these triggers I'm having is because, again, 9-year-old Brittany didn't feel these feelings or have any grief.
Exactly.
9-year-old Brittany just compartmentalized that shit, put it in
Yeah.
a box, and it popped up. That box popped open like a jack in the box at random points in my life and
Yeah.
caused issues.
Yeah.
So I started going to therapy, and I'm a huge advocate for therapy. And most people be like, "Oh, I had a therapist and it didn't work out." Okay, if you dating somebody and it don't work out, what do?
You
You
never
end it. You
date
find
nobody
another one.
again.
If you go to a restaurant and you don't like the food, are you gonna just never go out to eat again? No, you go to a different one. So it's the same for therapy. It's the same for like being, if you want to work on yourself and your mental health, you can't just be like, oh, I tried, it didn't work. No, that's fear. You're scared because what if it works? What does it look like? Oh,
Right.
I got to put in work to get better. Yes, you have to put in work. It's simple. It ain't easy, but it's simple. It's simple. It's simple.
That's a word. That's a word.
And so yeah, I got into therapy, and honestly, before like maybe some months before I got into therapy, my mom got into therapy because my wife, she's gonna tell everybody in her life, everybody around her are in therapy currently,
I'm crying.
because I swear to God, she always tell people, oh, you should get into therapy, Mom gets into therapy. My mom raised 6 kids, single parent for the most part, below the poverty line. We had a hard life. She started her first kid. She had her first kid. She was 17, and had 6 kids. So she had a life, And when she got to therapy, she was able to work on her own crap. And then now I can see her as a woman. She sees me as a woman. We can talk about things that happened in the past that before therapy we not talking about it because for one, it's too painful to talk about. Somebody gonna be crying. No, you don't want to look at at the situation. But now my life changed. I'm talking about. She's like my best friend at this point, and she started when she was what 49 or 50 going therapy. It's never too late. No age,
It's never too late.
gender, whatever. Like
It's never too
therapy
late.
helps you unpack that crap, unpack those bags.
Exactly.
And when I started to get better and was going to therapy, the song by Erykah Badu, Bag Lady, hits different. It's different. I'm talking about I'm going through my life carrying these suitcases and bags. I'm like, man, I'm always tired. Why I'm always getting sick? Why I'm exhausted. I don't have any energy. I don't have any ambition for anything I want to do. I'm carrying around these bags. I'm mentally drained. I'm emotionally drained, and I'm constantly living in fight or flight.
Exactly.
My body is in survival mode. It was insane. It was insane when I had the realization. Like it clicked. I'm like, I need to help everybody I can. How can I help everybody? I can everyone in my reach, and how can I go beyond the reach by helping people? It was
exactly.
It
was a moment. I swear, it was a like I don't know if you've ever seen the show That's So Raven, but where she like spaces out, and I was like, oh shit, that was an epiphany.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I'm going to talk about hyper arousal, but one of the things that will lead into that is that I want people to understand that like I have not only, went to school for this type of stuff, but I also like have lived through it myself. So it's like, I'm not telling you this stuff like as someone who has never been through anything themselves. Like I've experienced trauma since the age of 3. And likely before that, but like we don't really develop memories until like about 3 years old. And so I had gone through so much shit and I hadn't processed any of it. Not a single lick of it. And there were times in my life where I just randomly started crying. And I was like, I don't know why I'm crying, but I'm crying and I'm just gonna go with it. Like, it was a release for me. And then I was like, it all came to a point when I sort of like had this like mental breakdown. Like I literally had a mental breakdown. I had not been processing this trauma. I had been heavily triggered by something, and I ended up having a mental breakdown, like a complete mental breakdown, where it was just like, I don't care about myself anymore or other people around me or whatever. And so that led to one of the lowest points. And are you hearing the echo? Is it?
Oh, I think I took I took out the AirPod. Let me just put it back in. My
I
bad.
just make sure. I was like, wait.
Let me fix this real quick. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
All right, gotcha. Yep.
Okay. So like I hadn't, it led me to my rock bottom.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I realized at my rock bottom is that I was using all of this stuff as a coping mechanism, which I'll get into later why I don't like that word, but we'll use it for now, a coping mechanism to deal with the life that I had essentially been forced into by society, by my parents, by everybody. Like I had been forced into this. And so I hit rock bottom. My rock bottom actually ended up getting me arrested. And it also ended up showing me just how warped and distorted my relationship with alcohol was. I did not realize how much of an alcoholic I actually was until I hit my rock bottom. I was like, no, I'm not like the people from the AA meetings that I've been seeing, like that I've been like attending as a facilitator. Like, I'm so different. Like, no,
I'm not living under a bridge, with a paper bag,
exactly.
I'm not
like,
an alcoholic.
Those people are alcoholics. Me, I just need alcohol to have a good time, alcohol to engage in the things I want to engage. Like, I just need alcohol. That's all. And I didn't realize how much I had relied on alcohol to numb the pain of everything that had happened to me. And I hadn't started, like, all my friends were a bunch of pothead stoners. And I hadn't, engaged in that at all. One, because it was illegal and I was used to be a goody two-shoes. And two, I was like, I'm not going to switch from one substance to the other. And so I kind of like went into that journey a little bit blind by some things. Because a lot of people don't understand that the age you experience the trauma is the age at which you need to reteach yourself. So if you are 30 years old and the trauma happened at 9, you can't tell it to you like 30-year-old can hear it. You need to tell it to you like 9-year-old can hear it. So when I was teaching my inner child about hyper and hypo arousal, I was like, okay, so the hyper arousal is like our window of tolerance is like our Pooh Bear time. We're naturally just chunky out here eating everything we want.
Mhm.
Our shirts don't fit and we got a cute little belly. We're just out here being our poo. When we are hyper aroused, we go into our Tigger phase, where we are so numb that we are bouncing all around, got so many ideas of everything to do, like everything is happening and it has to happen all at once and we can't really see beyond it. And then our hypo to the flow, arousal is a time where it's our Eeyore time, where we are so numb, we don't really feel like doing anything. We don't feel like eating. We don't feel like having fun. We don't feel like doing any of those things. And I had to teach that to my inner child in that way in order for them to understand. Like when me as an adult was like, oh God, I think I'm hypo aroused right now. And in order for my heart not to quicken or feel like an immense amount of shame about that, I had to teach my inner child, hey, this is, what you have been through. And this is what our bodies do as a result of it. Like, it doesn't have to be as strong. It doesn't have to be as intense or as often that's why we're working on it, but that's what happens to us. And so when you're in these states of hyper, I'm going to take the hyper so we can go a little bit into it more. Hyper aroused, I would use alcohol to bring myself back down.
Mm.
And when I was in hypo arousal, I would use alcohol just to numb it all out, which was not
Alcohol
good
to escape
because
reality on both ends.
right, which was not great, especially for the Eeyore or hypo arousal, because I was already in a state of depression, and alcohol is a depressant. So it was like that was only just making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't see that till I hit rock bottom. But when I am in hyper arousal, one of the things I've noticed that helps me come back down is the use of, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the word, because on TikTok, I'm never allowed to say like weed.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, yeah. I can't say it. So it's like, what do I say instead? But like,
again, y'all, this podcast isn't shaming alcohol or glamorizing weed. This is just for experience, y'all.
Exactly. Absolutely. This is my experience. Is that the use of certain types of marijuana helped alleviate symptoms of hyper or hypoarousal. Like the natural instance of sativa is this creative burst of energy. If I'm in hypoarousal and I'm looking to practice gratitude, but I can't necessarily do that because my brain is too numb to think of anything, that just a simple inhale will help me focus my brain so I can write my gratitude list. And from my gratitude list comes movement. And from movement comes cooking. And from cooking comes eating. So it's like this natural supplement to help with what I'm already doing, which is also what the meds I take do. So like when I am saying like live your life holistically, I mean find what works for you. Because I had this conversation on TikTok where someone was like, oh, for me, it was just changing the way I viewed alcohol instead of getting rid of drinking alcohol altogether. And I was like, that happens. Some people realize that they need to change their relationships with substances. And some people realize they need never to go to that substance ever again. And
I lost the ability to I can just change my perspective on it. And I'm glad people can do that. But for me,
okay.
I can't. The way my body operates, if I, ingest anything, my body is going to instantly crave more of whatever it is. Like whatever it is going to automatically crave more. So I can't even. Yeah.
I feel you. I have Stony Baloney friends who have been doing it for way longer than I have. And then I have friends who don't at all, but they drink alcohol. And then I have friends who don't do anything in that with substances. And so it's like, it's all about being able to discern what is helpful for you. And you can't do that if you're not healing enough to see who you are. Because if you don't see yourself as someone who can't handle alcohol because you're trying to be perfect, because the society says you got to be perfect in order to be worthy, then you're never going to understand that, like, sometimes you just got to leave it alone. And I'm not, like you said, it's simple, but it ain't easy. Like, it's not easy at all. I'm not trying to tell you that it's easy, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I am trying to tell you to heal so you can show you what to do, because you are the expert of your life. All I'm giving you is a chance to direct that inner fire that you have to, instead of self-sabotaging and doing other things like that, I want you to direct that fire to boundaries, to wholeness, to nutrition, to all of these beautiful things that you deserve. And I'm not shaming you for self-sabotage, because all that shows to me as a mental health clinician is that you know how to create safety for yourself. You want to feel safe, so you created safety for yourself. So now, as you know, someone who wants you to heal and help you, I'm going to say that same fire you have to self-sabotage to create safety is the same fire you can use to create boundaries. Because self-sabotage is walls. Boundaries are a little bit more flexible and they allow you to move. These walls keep you boxed in. So that's what I'm saying. Like, when I'm talking to clients, when I'm talking to my friends, when I'm talking to anybody, it's like, I can't tell you how to live your life. I'm not you. What I can do is say, you have a fire within you that has brought you to this moment. And I know that fire can be channeled into making you whole, and whole in the way that you see it.
Yeah. And I believe, like, even with medication and stuff like that, it's not a if you take it, you still, like you said, you got to add in things into your life.
You do.
The medication can work if you add in these holistic steps or holistic models to enhance your life.
Exactly.
Otherwise, no matter what you do, it's not going to be fixed.
Right.
One, it's not a quick fix, but no matter what you do, it's always going to be an issue, like
exactly
an imbalance somewhere in your life. From my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had a question on that.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, because oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, like, I can smoke all the weed I want to. If I don't put into practice the things that actually help me, all I'm doing is numbing. And don't get me wrong, for a time, there are times where that's what I teach to a lot of people. A lot of people don't. I'm not gonna get into that.
You need to numb it. You need to give your body the ability to recover from whatever's going on.
Exactly.
Or you will just be like in fight or flight the whole time. There's no time to recover.
Exactly. Because like that adrenaline rush and all that stuff you get from fight or flight is gonna take it out of your body. And so if you're hungry, if you're tired, if you all of these things, you can't really focus on the higher parts of yourself because you ain't taking care of the basic stuff. So it's like, I'm not saying you don't get to numb, and I'm not shaming, and I'm not doing any of those things to anybody. What I am saying is, if you want to grow through what you go through, you have to use what you have at your disposal to do that. So like, as much as sometimes I love just being a stony baloney and zoning out for 4 days, I still have to come back and deal and process with those emotions.
And as far as even like with the stoning thing, I know a lot of people who have CBD supplements for different reasons because it's helpful, like on a holistic level. But like, it's funny how, well, not funny, it's ironic how it's legal everywhere, and that's fine. But a lot of people use it to numb from reality instead of like navigating through tough times and getting to the other side and being better. I'm like, it's ironic for the government to be like, all right, we're gonna legalize it and let's keep glamorizing other substances so you can be numb from reality,
right?
And instead of working towards you like navigating to be the best you or your higher self. And you can use these substances, that's fine, but I just don't want people to avoid reality for so long that years pass and they're not growing, and I'm just like, man, you gotta face reality.
You gotta face it.
You can get through is when you go through it, instead of being stunted in that phase, and it's always gonna be there.
It's always gonna be there. And that's
ironic.
It is. And that's the one thing that, like, my book that I teach is that you can, put your compartmentalizing that you have already know how to do, and do that so that you can rest your body up, so you can eat, so you can move, so you can do all of those things to uncover that and be like, okay, what do I need to take out of this? What is not serving me? What needs to go? What needs to stay? What is part of my strength? All of these things. You can do both of those things. It's just a lot of times we either are shamed into doing one thing or shown and glamorized into doing the other. So it's like, oh, use all of these substances and you'll be fine. And reality is blah, blah, blah. But you don't see the part where pre-colonialization, therapists have existed for a long time. They just haven't been called therapists. Like, if you were in my village and you came to me with all this stuff that is completely natural, it's completely natural as a human. You came to me, you would talk to me, I would give you advice. I would most likely give you, we didn't have, meds back then, but we had different substances that we used. And some of it was herbs. Exactly. So it's like therapists and like this idea of someone helping you process has always been a thing for us. I can't talk about the societies where my folks won't act, but like the societies in which we were building always had this. And so like, it's both. It's not either or. It's not this or that. And yes, you're gonna mess up as a human. That's what you do. That's what you're here to do. But like, you can use what you have at your disposal in order to help your life be better and to face up what you know you need to face up. Because what is not relieved will be relived.
Yeah, definitely.
Over and over again.
Yeah, that's true. And also at the most inconvenient times.
Okay.
The most inconvenient times. Sometimes it sticks around longer, and now you're stuck in this state of mind or this being. And now when you get back on track to your what do you call it, that
window of tolerance.
Window of tolerance. Now we get back to that window of tolerance. You got to catch back up, because for the past few weeks or months, you just been out of it. So now you got a mess to clean up. It's something
physically and literally. Because
I was gonna say, so like, you might get into like your background, your childhood, like what you don't have to go into detail, but did something happen in your childhood or your upbringing for you to embark on the journey of like social work and mental health? Yeah. And also, what happened for you to get out of the social work and the mental health field, like to not be a social worker anymore if you're not a social worker?
So I'm always going to technically be a social worker because I have the degree, and like, if you have the degree, they kind of just attach that to you, for life. So I was living in a very traumatic situation when I was younger. My mother and my grandmother were very impoverished, and they couldn't really afford to take care of me. And so I was removed from my mother's custody when I was 3 and placed into foster care. And I think that experience shaped my early desire to go into social work, because I liked my social worker and I was like, I want to be this person when I grow up for little me, for a little person. And so then my foster mom was like, I don't want you to like have this long drawn out custody battle. So this family that wants to adopt you, I'm going to let them adopt you. Even though I loved my foster mom, I wanted to stay there. Like, I love them. So I got adopted. And after I got adopted, I proceeded to experience every single abuse. Physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual, financial, every single form of abuse. And my parents were older. They were like mid boomers, maybe late boomers, something like that. And so they had lived through the most traumatic stuff in this country. Like, they had lived through civil rights movements. They went to an all Black school until middle school. That's when they entered, or high school, one of those. That's when they entered. Segregation
and stuff. Okay. And then integration.
Yeah. So they experienced all the trauma of that. And so what happened was they never processed through that. Like, stepping back, I can see that my parents never fucking processed through their shit. They never fucking processed through what happened to them. As parents, I'm going to hold them accountable and say that they shouldn't have done any of the shit that they did, But I'm going to say that I also understand not why they did it, because I don't like the term why, but like I understand where it was coming from, because a lot of the abuse I was suffered was trying to make me into someone whom wouldn't get hurt by white supremacy,
To be accepted by society.
to be accepted by society. That's what they wanted for me. And so they like literally pushed me into being someone that I wasn't. And so it was because of that that I experienced all of that. And I was like, okay, so I definitely want to be a social worker. I definitely want to get kids out of this situation. And a lot of my hurt was clouding my judgment as to what I actually wanted to do. Because as grateful as I am to the social work profession and field of study that gave me all of the knowledge to help people, I don't think it's what I would have wanted to do had I not been so hurt by a system.
Yeah.
And so for me, I went through school thinking, yes, I'm going to be a social worker for adoption and foster care. Turns out I didn't want to do any of that, because I did CPS, I did foster care, and I was like, oh, fuck no.
My wife worked at an emergency foster care system a few years ago for a few years, and I think it was supposed to be for like, it's intended to be for 90 days, but those kids were in that group home for like over a year, and then they'll go back to their family, and the situation will still be the same. They'd come right back like a few months later, because like the parent didn't fully change, or something happened and the kid came right back. And from her working there, for a few years, and then she's studying psychology, and she learned about, I think, was it visceral trauma, where you working with people that have like a lot of trauma, then it starts to affect you. Yeah. But yeah, she
it's rough, and like
the system is
it's rough. And I worked in a group home, and I was working with youth aging out of foster care. So I was working with 21 and above. And so I was like, oh no, I can't do this. I know I can't do this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know I can't do this. So I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And my mentor was like, have you ever thought about being a community organizer? And I was like, you can do that with a social work degree? And she was like, first of all, you can do whatever you want with a social work degree. And I was like, okay, well, what's up? So I got more into the field of community organizing and realized a lot of these problems were at the systemic level and pushing down. And so what I began to realize is my analysis of the system of the human body was helpful for the analysis of systems as well, at this, like the structural level. So the trauma faced by a lot of us, like from our parents, are from societies created and colonized by societies that presented or made these parents. And so this idea that, of treating someone on the individual level was wonderful, but it just wasn't for me. Like, I was made to fight on the more systemic level so that the people helping, the people on the individual level were okay and they got what they needed, the resources, the funding, the whatever. But my role was to help alleviate problems that caused me to be removed from my mother in the first place. Because mind you, my parents were abusive and destructive to my psyche. But my birth mother, she wrote a letter to me. She wrote a letter to my parents. And she was like, I want you to know that my daughter, is very strong-willed. She has so much self-respect for herself. Funnily enough, she did say one day she's going to be famous. That was hilarious to me. And so my mother said all of these things about me. And she was like, children are just people too. So like, don't break their spirit. Just like reason with them, because they just don't know, And that's what my mom was saying. And to realize that, like, she didn't have no money, no means of taking care of me, but she loved me. Whereas these people were rich. let me tell you, I grew up with, I, I tried to describe the wealth that I grew up in, but the only way to describe it is if you've ever seen the show Friends.
Yeah, I'll watch that.
Rachel. That is
Okay.
my story. Like, my parents were wealthy, they paid for everything, and like literally my rock bottom was me starting over as basically like as everything. I had to start over with everything. And so I experienced all this trauma and I thought I knew the solution. I healed and I began to see that things were a lot wider and a lot more gray and less black and white. And that's what really helped me understand that, hey, I have this education that I don't necessarily really care about, but like it's helped me know things that can help other people who maybe don't have access to the individual help that they need. And it's like, I got to keep saying, you know, I'm not a therapist. I'm not your therapist. And it's not because I hate you or I don't want to help you. It's simply for the fact that you are the expert of your own life. And when you enter in a therapeutic relationship, you bring that expertise. Your therapist brings their expertise, and together you make your life whole. And that's why I'm not your therapist, because I can't give you specifically what you need. Even if you hear stuff from me and I'm like, yes, I love that. Oh my God, absolutely. I'm going to do that. I still can't be your therapist. And I know that sucks because I wish I could reach through the phone and just magically do it for any and everybody, but like, I can't.
I have another question to see.
Of course.
So looking back on your journey, is there anything you would have done differently?
No.
You know, through the ups and downs, nothing?
Not a damn thing.
Is there a specific moment that impacted you the most? That, like, I know you said your social worker was super nice and you was like, I'm going to be a social worker.
Yeah.
And then you became a social worker and you're like, not for me. So anything like specific that impacted your decision, like, you know, a core memory for you to be like, I can't do this no more?
I was holding my youngest client. I was working in, I can't remember if it was CPS or foster care at the time, but there is a difference. Child Protective Services is more like going into homes and investigating, and foster care is more like case management for like the kids. Either way, I don't like it, but I digress. I was holding my youngest client. My youngest client was 2 days old. Mom had left the baby in the hospital, and she basically just disappeared. We don't really know what happened to her. We were trying to track her down to see like what was happening, and we just could not find her. So this baby is in my arms and they are shaking, and they are shaking from DTs. They are about not 2 days old. Let me say 2 weeks, because we weren't, this was before COVID. So like there wasn't a lot of safety measures around like that kind of contact with newborns, but like still this, it was like 2 weeks because you got to give them time and stuff. She left 2 days after he was born, but we didn't see him until 2 weeks. And so I was holding this baby and I'm rocking back and forth in the chair, just, you know, trying to connect and, you know, make sure he knows he's okay and all of that. And he warmed up to me, and he, you know, he was a baby. He did what babies do. And so I was like saying to this baby, I was like, I'm so sorry you're here. I'm so sorry that so many systems have failed you, failed your mama, failed all of y'all. I'm so sorry. And so like naturally he goes to sleep because he's like, what I got to be awake for?
Yeah, you rock him, you giving him what he need at that moment, so he's comfortable.
He's comfortable.
He's falling asleep.
He's going to sleep. And so I noticed that like before I picked him up, he was experiencing a lot more DTs. But like as I was rocking him and holding him, his body was starting to like, you know, ease, and you know, he was still shaking a little bit from it, but he was getting better. So I put him back down and I go to the nurse's station with the social worker who is like the person I'm shadowing at the time, because like before you start a job, you shadow a person there and then you
Mm-hmm.
go off on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to the nurse's station and the nurse's station or the nurse at the station is like, this yet another crackhead and all this other stuff about the mom and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, the social worker about to step up and be like, why are you talking about her like that? And the social worker was like, yeah, it's pathetic out here. And I was like, I know you fucking lying. I know you fucking lying because I know if the mother was here right now, you wouldn't be saying this shit in front of her. So I know you fucking lying. And so I'm trying not to get fired from my job. So I'm like, I don't participate. I just keep silent. I don't say shit. Because in the back of my head, I was like, are we not supposed to be helping these people? Like, yes, we can feel, a certain emotion for the child. But like for you to disregard and shame a parent who likely is suffering with substance abuse disorder, who likely didn't get the help she needed, like, how dare you? Like, it was all a moment like where I was like, how fucking dare you? Because I know in this very moment, reunification is not your goal. I have already sensed that about you. And so in that very moment, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I simply cannot do this anymore. Like, I'm not helping this woman alleviate the problems that led to her substance abuse disorder. All I'm doing is separating her from this child, which if she needed to be separated in order for her to get the help that she wanted, like for her to go into rehab and all that kind of stuff, that's her business. But like for us just to separate them for the sake of separating them and like absolutely shit on the mom, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. I had to walk away after that point. And this was after, mind you, I had been fired from several jobs for buying a kid a coat, buying a person a meal. Like, there's been several instances where I had either been written up or fired based on the things that I thought were just basic empathy.
But there's like guidelines in place that prevent y'all from doing these things for whatever reason it may be. But yeah, that's
yeah.
Most times, like especially like substance abuse, in communities, or I say communities at the poverty level, for one, the system for the most part failed them. I'm gonna speak in my experience growing up. There was no, as far as mental health, it wasn't big back then. Coming up, it was like, I mean, maybe it was big, but not in my community. So people turn to, for the most part, I know with my mom, she had 6 kids, but she wasn't a drinker or she didn't do drugs. Thank God that she didn't dabble into that, but it was hard financially.
Right.
My grandmother, so my mom's mom, had 8 kids. Oof. But her thing, she turned to religion. So even to this day, she's big in religion, love her to death, sweetest lady, nice. But she has trauma she never dealt with.
Nope.
I hope she don't hear this episode.
I'm right.
Hear me. I hope she hear this episode. But maybe she will. But trauma that she hasn't dealt with. And then her mom, it goes back. And so if I go back to my great grandmother, who was born, back in the 20s, 1919, no, maybe 1914-ish. If I go back to my great grandmother, who was born back then, although she was, some of her siblings was white passing, so some of them, when things went south and went wrong, they all dispersed. There was 13 of them, and a few of them went to Oklahoma and lived a double life, an easier life.
Right.
But she did it. So she was in Mississippi, and dealt with the racism, systematic racism, all that crap to keep people of color, at a certain spot, to keep them down. So then my grandmother is born, and she has kids, and she's living through the civil rights movement with 8 kids. So she grabbed onto religion. My God is going to save me. So she was at maybe around 29 or 30 when she grabbed on. No, I'm lying. She grabbed onto religion. She was maybe 20,
Mm-hmm.
early in her earlier years, but she shifted to a different Christian religion. I'm not going to be specific, but a different Christian religion when she was like 29 or 30.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's 82. So for 50 some years that she's been on this specific religion, that's her hope right there. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, God, damn, I wish she would just look into therapy,
Okay.
unpack a little bit, because I know it's hard. Civil rights movement, black lady in Mississippi,
Come
and in
on
Memphis,
now.
Tennessee, like it's some stuff to unpack
That's
there.
what I was talking about with my parents. They were in North Carolina. Like, they were living through sit-ins. They literally went to the school where the sit-ins were. Like,
My grandmother marched with Dr. King at one point in Memphis.
boo.
So
Like,
then, so then my mom comes along in 1971, and even when she was like a little kid, it was still certain places that was just, you
mm-hmm.
know, not off limits, but off limits,
Off
And
limits,
it's the
yeah.
70s. That's the 70s. So all these things in place and resources that's not accessible,
Mm-hmm.
at that time, there are still things in place that there are still systems in place to keep people in certain spots. But there are
Mm-hmm.
also resources to help us, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why my job is to help people navigate to the resource and being resourceful to get what
Right.
you can, get the help you can get, and
Right.
being better, and changing the direction of your life and your generation. Because like although there are systems in place that's meant to keep people in a certain spot, there's also systems that can help us.
Exactly.
And personally, if I only look at, oh well, this happened because my grandmother had 8 kids, my mom had 6 kids, and we was poor, and the system did this. For me personally, I can't put my attention into that because I won't be able. It's like looking in the rearview mirror of why I got a flat tire. I need to like find a way through to the other side, and
I see.
or a safe path for myself, and like,
Yeah.
oh, I can go down this path and it'll help me out a lot.
Yeah.
And now my job is to, hey y'all, I went down this path, go down this path with me, and things, it can get better. It will get better. It
It
can
will
get
get
better.
better. It will and can get better.
But it sucks that all these generations
Mm-hmm.
was screwed over, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's just like a pot of crap that is hard. Like, it's gonna take so much time and work
To clean.
not
Like,
even fix it, but clean it up.
exactly.
And it's just a lot.
It's
But
a
I'm like, I'm
lot.
willing to help. I'm willing to be somebody to help clean up this mess that other folks made. It's a lot.
One of the things that my friend, when I was going through the thick of it, she told me, she was like, you are an ancestor's answered prayer. One day the ancestor said, I want this person to be here. And the universe said, bet. And they created you. So for me, I don't know if you follow me on Instagram. Well, you do now. But there's a post on my Instagram that is like, that ass is iconic and that depression is chronic. And within the post, I talk about how it's not just about taking your meds. It's not just about yoga and breath work. It's not just about therapy. It's not just about trying and trying again. It's not just about grieving. It is about all of those things. Everything all at once, everywhere, whatever that movie was, like, that is what it's about. And yes, there are places in which what I'm trying to get people to understand is that like generational trauma is different. See, our ancestors' generational trauma was the trauma of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, things like that. We still got passed down that generational trauma. It just looked like the parents who came from that society. That is what our generational trauma is. Our generational trauma is to understand that our parents may have done some fucked up things in trying to parent us, but it was them not dealing with their generational trauma that got passed on to us in the form of parenting. That is the problem, not the actual person. Like for some people, it was like coming to that realization meant that I could reconnect with family. But for me, it was like, okay, stay your ass over there still. Because the most honorable thing I can do for you right now is to take you out my life
Mm-hmm.
because you just don't have a place here anymore. To everything,
Mm-hmm.
there is a time and season, and your time and your season has come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Most
I
times,
think
though, you don't know what you don't know.
you don't know what you
So
don't know.
if our our parents and our grandparents aren't willing to like reflect and look at their part, then it's
Hmm.
just gonna be a brick wall. Like you talking to a brick wall, you just hitting it. So
So I can't do that. I can't do that. Like for some people, I just can't. I can't. You just can't. Some people
mm-hmm.
may be able to, but not me. Not I. Said the fly.
Mm-hmm.
But like it is an inherited trauma that stems from a society that created parents to be abusive because the society is abusive.
Yeah.
And so, like I was saying earlier, this system or this level of analysis that I was doing for people and family systems, I now do at the structural level with systems like the education, the medical, all of those different systems. And what I see in both cases is there is this traumatic two-parent situation
Mm-hmm.
that is abusive, and then you have the children of the abusive people. So like in the family system, it's parent and parent, and then you have the hero child, you have all of these different children that represent what happened to you when you grow up with narcissistic abuse and things like that. The same triggers and traumas are happening at the systemic level with white supremacy and capitalism. And those are our generational traumas that have been inherited. And so now we have to figure out, we have to clean off everything enough to see that it's not just our parents, it's not just a system, it is this whole collection of conditioning and all of this to believe that we aren't inherently worthy. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was faith. That was faith was like, God was like, don't you be fucking with them people over there. Don't do that. And so I am studying to be a pastor. My
Yeah, I saw
grandfather,
your name is Pastor G, right?
yeah. So I am studying to be a pastor. My grandfather was a Southern Baptist preacher for 65 years. And so some of it was influenced by him, but some of it was a calling from who I call God, but whom people call the Great
Yeah.
Spirit, whatever you want to
Whatever
call
you
it.
want to call them.
You
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
As
Okay.
long as you believe in.
Okay, whatever you want to call it. And so, like, what happened was I was like, okay, I am going to base my life and actions in the love that I have been learning and reading about for a long time. But I have to clean off the muck of religious trauma because I'm gay. And if I'm trying to turn to God and God says, I don't like you because you're gay, how they gonna help me? How they gonna hit me?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I had to clean off the muck of what was religious trauma. And one of those things was this idea that God didn't create you to be who you were. Like he didn't know somehow you were going to be who you were, or that somehow you coming into who you are separates you from the love that the creator, that God, whoever has for you.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was reading, it was like, who can separate us from the love of God? Nobody. Like, then, all of this stuff that people were saying was based not in like actual reading of the word and comprehending it, but this white supremacist trauma in religion that you had never healed from. You had not ever cleared the muck away from the slave Bible to know that like, this is not it. This is not it. And so it's about understanding that our generational trauma, the muck that's in our eyes about our generational trauma, has to change because the system that created systems created parents that parented you, and that is where you get your trauma from. And it doesn't excuse accountability. It doesn't excuse anything. Like, I'm telling you, as someone who has been financially, sexually, physically, emotionally, all that abused, I'm telling you, it was never about those people. It was never about those people, but more about what we have been conditioned to believe is humanity, and this perfectionism crap is not it. And if you base any of your healing in the idea that you can never, ever, ever have anxiety, hypo or hyper arousal, any of those things, you're not healing. You're just trying to perfect hurt. That's all you're doing, is perfecting hurt. That's it.
So I think I just heard you say a little bit. Let's go back to, you say you're writing a book, right? Or you have a book out already? So where can our listeners find that book?
I have the link in my Instagram and the link in my TikTok.
What's your handles for TikTok and Instagram? Where can they find you?
Oh, I was like, oh wait, wait, don't you know? Oh, right. So on Instagram, I am _Pastor Gigi, Gigi. And then on TikTok, I am _Pastor Gigi 2.0. And the link to my book is in that bio. It is a shame-free, healing and human-centered, trauma-informed, because that's what my background is in, as far as social work goes. Like, focus on, look at what it's like to connect with your inner child for the first time, and what that means, and what that looks like, and how to do it, stuff like that. And what is so wonderful about this book is I wrote it initially for my inner child.
It was experience.
Yeah. It's from my very experience. And so I initially wrote it for her so that she would understand what was happening. And so then I was like, maybe this might help somebody else, you know? And I didn't want to like have it behind a paywall or something like that, but like, I also know that I needed to, like, labor was put into it, so I had to get something out of it. So like, you can pay for the book, you can barter and trade for the book, you can get this information how you get it, because I want people to have it. And the book is on a sliding scale. I've had people pay $3 for it. I've had people pay $50. It is all based on what you have and what you can, without hurting yourself financially, give or personally. Because some people have created things for me and like marketing tools and stuff like that for the book. And that's how they paid for the book. So you can, get the book however, you can. And also it will come to you however you like it. If you want it in like a little flippy book thing, I can get to that. If you want it as a Google slideshow, if you want it as a PDF, however you want this book, it comes to you. And however you can pay for it, that's how it comes to you.
Okay. I like that. You make it accessible to like everyone, no matter what. And the sliding scale shows that that you're really genuine about just helping people navigate through it by showing them your experience.
Yeah.
Because if it was a set price, it's like, this is it, whatever. But you went from slide scale to even how they can receive the book. That shows a lot on your end. And so if you, just where do you think, or what would you want to be like maybe 2 years from now? Like, what are you working on now? So like in 2 years, if you wanted to say 5 years, that's fine. But in the future, your future self, future Grace will be doing this one thing.
I think future Grace will be still continuing to preach, teach, and write. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to preach, teach, and write. My current 9-to-5 job is actually, I'm a community organizer. That's what I do. I teach people how to organize for changes they want to see in their community. That's my day job. And so in 2 years, it's funny because I'm actually quitting my job. In 2 years, my boss and I were talking about that. And so I'm actually quitting my job in about 18 months. And I'm going to start preaching and teaching full time.
Hell yeah.
And writing, because I not only have written the Once Parented Twice Shy, the name of the book is, but it's a series of books. So it's going to be like connecting with your inner child for the first time, and then reparenting and reteaching boundaries, feelings, community, justice, faith, all of those different things, so that you can reparent yourself. And so it's going to be a series of books, but I've also written a bunch of other things, like a series of essays. I've obviously written a ton of sermons because I'm studying to be a pastor. But I've also written a play. So whatever I'm doing, I want to be preaching, I want to be teaching, I want to be writing.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds really good. I was gonna say something else. I just had a brain fart.
And now let's talk now.
You said what?
I said, now listen, I'm a preacher. I can talk now. So
me too. As I was trying to, make sure it's a conversation that flows, that I can talk. I'm like, nope, it's not about me. This is about Grace and her experience. And I'll pop in when I can relate, or if I have to, say something. But yeah, so this was so far an awesome episode. Is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners / viewers?
Yes. I think what I would leave you with is healing is about handling, not hiding. You are already an expert at hiding. I want you to use that cunning, that skill, that fire, that everything to make sure it's handled. Olivia Pope. You got to be on your Olivia Pope thing. It's handled. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's it.
She did handle it all. Like, no matter what episode of on Scandal, always a twist, but somehow at the end,
it was handled.
Handled it. If only life was that easy. Simple, but not easy. But yeah, so folks, thank you for listening in and watching. So of course I launched my coaching business. And if you're interested in being coached by me to help navigate through life, you can just hit me up on Instagram or TikTok. It's Mr. Cheeto Head. Yeah, it's an odd one. So MrCheetohead. Mr. Cheeto Head. Just hit me up on there, and then we can get your own personalized program for you. Anything else?
No, that's all I got.